So all of that makes you think about what kinds of treatments you might want to do and how those also have to be variable. So some other interesting data from this larger sample of 60 kids was that there were typical or neurotypical kids who nominated a child with autism as a friend, either a best friend, a top friend. So 37 of those were reciprocated friendships. In other words, the child with autism said, yes, he's my friend, and the other child said, yes, the child with autism is my friend. 4 of them were best friends, so they agreed on that. 11 were just in the top 3 friends, and then 22 of them were mismatched, meaning they were either, somebody said they were the best friend, the other one said, oh, he's just one of my top friends, right? Now, there's all this variability amongst neurotypical kids, too. 43 of these, though, were unilateral. 43 of the examples, I think there were 80 altogether. So that the child with autism did not reciprocate. The neurotypical child said, this is my friend, and the child with autism did not reciprocate back, right? So they're not always aware of other children who could be potential friends. So in other words, it goes both ways. So 54% were unilateral, meaning the typical child said, this is my friend, and the child with autism said, didn't nominate them. And 46% were unilateral, meaning a mismatch. Okay, let's see. Okay, so a question for us is, can we change those social networks? So in this 60 children with autism, we randomized them to one of 4 treatments. And I have to tell you, there are no other randomized controlled studies out there on peer relationships. So even though we have social skills groups as a very common practice, we have very few studies showing us that they are effective. So in this 60 children, we randomized them to either a target child intervention. We chose interventions that were out there in the literature. So a target child intervention is using an aide or an adult to intervene with that child one-on-one. And they got intervention twice a week at school. Or we said, okay, we're just going to choose 3 peers from the classroom, and we're going to teach those peers how to help kids on the playground be more connected to their classmates. Right? So just a peer intervention. We know that the peer-mediated interventions are very effective with preschool-age kids, but we had no evidence really that they would be effective with school-age kids. My hypothesis was that it wouldn't be particularly effective with school-age kids. And then we did a target child or a peer intervention, we did both of those, but not together. Not together because we could not identify the child with ASD. Okay, these are some of the restrictions in working with public schools. So we had graduate students who would go out and work one-on-one with the target child, and we would have another set of graduate students work with the typical peers. Again, not identifying the child with ASD. And then the contrast condition was just inclusion only, so just practice as usual. And our outcome measure, I mean, I'm not going to talk particularly about what we did in those sessions. You can ask me about those if you're interested. But they were individualized to kids, and it was short-term, 12 sessions, 6 weeks. So the question is, can you do anything in a very short period of time to change these networks? Our hypothesis was probably not. We thought what we could change is what we saw in the playground, but maybe not kids' perceptions of one another in 6 weeks. So this is an example of this social network. And E5 down here is a little girl in 2nd grade at time 1, and she's isolated. So no one's picking her, and she's not even nominating herself to a group. She was in the peer-only intervention. We come back in 6 weeks and do these networks again, and you can see now she's connected to a group. There are 3 kids who nominate her to this group. So she's not in the most popular group, but she's, you know, right in there. And then we come back after 3 months, and see if anything is lasting. And in this case, we have this child, again, still connected to even a larger group. One point to make is that there are kids who are isolated that are not autism, and there are even more in the 3 months when we come back. So this is and they're different kids. So it is a changing target even amongst typical kids. There's all of this variability. All right, so in this study then, we found that, lo and behold, not a big surprise, is that the combination treatment was the best for changing those social networks. So we have an effect size of, which is pretty large, a 1.0. And the second best treatment was the peer treatment. Okay, that surprised us. The target child one-on-one, like having an aide, was no more effective than inclusion only. All right. So we're also interested in what happens on the playground. And so in this case, we had graduate students going out to the school on different days than treatment was being conducted, and they were different graduate students, and they were just coding play behaviors on the playground. So they were like little spies on the yard. And of course, we saw lots of variability. But at the end of intervention, the children in the treatments were more engaged in the playground games. And the one that made the biggest difference were the peer treatments, so both the combination and the peer treatment. And the interesting thing is, again, remember, those peers were not targeting the child with autism in particular. They were targeting any child on the playground who needed help in engaging in games. We also found that in terms of teacher and clinician ratings, and the teachers had no idea what we were doing, because remember, they're not on the playground, and they weren't that involved in the treatment. We didn't ask them to do anything other than this teacher report of behavior. And what they reported was that the peer treatment, those kids that were in the peer treatment, had the best change in classroom behavior, classroom social behavior. All right, so there was this change from what was happening on the playground into the classroom. And then the clinician reports suggested that both the peer and the combination were best for increasing the number of friendships for that child. All right. So intervening with peers in the, in the child with ASD's classroom may be the best treatment, which is a little counterintuitive. And I think what that suggests is that we can work as hard as we can on trying to get skills increased in our kids with ASD, and they need that. But if the environment's not ready to help them, it's just not going to generalize. So, we see all the time kids who are pretty good at knowing how to go up to kids and greet, "Can I play?" And then they don't know what to do after that. In fact, I've seen them with an aide go up and greet somebody and then just turn right back around and come back to the adult aide, right? Because they did what they were supposed to do. So, we have to sort of go beyond this sort of just increasing skills. What will be important, I think, though, is translating this sort of expert intervention from, UCLA graduate students to school staff. So when we did our initial randomized controlled study, the school staff wasn't very involved. They weren't involved at all, actually. But the sustainability of this particular approach is only going to happen if the school staff buy into it and really take it on themselves. And that's a hard thing to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do now, sort of having learned from that randomized controlled trial. We have a new project for underserved and underrepresented kids. So we're really trying now to go out into schools and to places where kids really don't have any services. And while that's true probably of a lot of kids with high-functioning autism who are in the regular schools, when you get into lower-income areas, it's really true. It's really pretty amazing what we saw. We're trying to now start up a new model that's school-based and it's peer-mediated, but that it's within a group situation. So in other words, it's trying to take the peer-targeted treatment and the target child treatment, put them together into a group that's on the school campus, but after school, so it doesn't take kids away from their academic activities. And the question is whether we can really create more positive social change for kids that's in their natural environments rather than in contrived ones. Because what happens in the social skills groups that are off campus, in the private practitioner's office with lots of kids with ASD from different schools and different classes, is that they will improve in their skills within that context, but it doesn't translate out into their natural environment. So we have a multi-site study with 4 other sites: Kennedy Krieger, University of Michigan, Florida State, and University of Washington. Let's see. And we're going to try this after-school activities group. And we're starting it now at our lab school. We've already run 2 groups at UES. And the beauty of this is that we actually have the people staffing the social skills activity club are the playground aides from the school. So we actually pay them for the after school, like you pay a coach, right? You pay them extra for doing soccer. We're paying them to come in and help us with the social activities club as a way of modeling for them facilitation between neurotypical kids and our kids with autism from the same playground situation. And that's important. So we actually have more neurotypical kids and fewer ASD kids in this activities club. The group is led by an expert, in this case a graduate student, but we're training up these teaching assistants to take this over in time. And their goal is to embed whatever those activities are onto the playground. So as I said, we've done this now twice at UES, and it takes a while, but we're now seeing aides who actually have whole activities for the whole playground area that involve all of the kids, and oftentimes have interests for our kids with ASD. So it's a way of facilitating those interactions and conversations without it being so adult-driven. All right, so to summarize then, children with ASD have many unmet social needs at school, and oftentimes no one's really paying attention to those as closely as we should be. Utilizing peer models is probably more effective than that one adult intervention. The good news is that we can really make a difference in a very short period of time if we just pay attention. But interventions need to be sustained for the sort of the long distance. And so we have to support both the school and child changes, and we have to support those changes in the school staff rather than bringing in outside experts all the time. Right? And I think that's it.
Okay, we're ready for our break. It is now 10 minutes of 11, so we'll have a 15-minute break. Please come back at 5 past 11, and we're going to begin our panel discussion, Ask the Experts. Remember to turn in your cards to the ushers on your way out. You can leave them up here and I'll take them. We're very interested in hearing the questions that you want, so don't forget to do that. Please remember to return promptly, and also take a look at the petitions outside that people have for your consideration.